Arganissima, New York. Your exotic skin, hair, and beauty source, and your one-stop shop for all your natural and organic skin and hair care, featuring authentic organic Moroccan oil and prickly pear seed oil and much more. Bringing you only the best, straight from the source and proudly produced in the USA. So what are you waiting for? Shop today at www.arganissima.com. Arganissima, New York. Your beauty is our duty. Arganissima, New York.
Hello there, this is Hurricane H.
Well, welcome back to the iHealth channel, the Fit and the Fab channel, and iHealth Radio. Hurricane H here, a new show, a new guest, a new topic. And our guest today is actually from the continent of Europe, and specifically from Spain. And so we have a time difference. And I appreciate her joining me and us as an audience from over the Atlantic. And, we've booked the show for over a couple months ago. And the interest here is that it tackles a little bit of a topic that is very dear to my heart and to pretty much everyone out there that has children. And it's more specific. Actually, it will probably affect all of us as listeners or viewers here, specifically when it comes to nutrition and healthy habits and so on and so forth, but more specifically for the kids. And so with me, I have Dr. Orlena Kerek, and she is by, education and first practice as a pediatric doctor or pediatrician, but she is more focused now on healthy habits as a health coach and teaching folks how to be good with their foods and how to really lead a good, a life and a healthy one. So doctor, how are you? Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I am absolutely amazing. Thank you for asking.
Well, listen, I am excited. It's been a minute since we booked. I've been waiting desperately. Now you're here. So we have an hour with you. So we're going to try to get the most from your expertise and your knowledge and your practice. And again, as I just briefly introduced, your background is very, unique because you focused on children primarily, and you took that to the next level. And I've had a lot of guests. We talked about general health and fitness and nutrition, but we don't focus specifically for children. And today, I think I only had one show about mental health with kids and things like that, but nothing, and I had another one for teenage suicide prevention, but nothing when it comes to healthy eating and healthy habits. And I call that a pandemic. We've been living a pandemic globally, but I think there's a much more dangerous, pandemic when it comes to obesity and, bad eating habits with the new generation. And so before we go to that, and dissect all these elements and learn from you, first, welcome. Give us a little bit about your background, just your practice and how you transited from just being a pediatrician into the world of healthy coaching, healthy habits.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much for having me. Well, as you can tell from my accent, I am from the UK, and that was where I was working as a pediatric doctor. But like you, I love to travel. And I always had this burning desire. And part of the reason I went into medicine was to travel. And I decided I was going to move to Spain, and I thought I was going to be a doctor in Spain. It's a long story. I did do a little bit of working in Spain, but essentially we moved here 10 years ago, and I started doing stuff online. And I started with picky eating for kids because I had children and they were picky children. And I was a bit like, hey, what is going on here? When I was a pediatric doctor, I used to see so many people who would come in, their kids would complain of tummy pain, and I would say, hey, it's great news. Your child is constipated, but you don't need to take medicine. All you need to do is eat more vegetables. Isn't that fabulous? And the parents would sort of look at me a bit going, yeah, okay.
Sure.
Fast forward a few years, and then I realized, well, not only do I have my own child sat on the toilet crying tears of agony because they aren't eating their vegetables, But I realized that it isn't as easy as just presenting our kids with vegetables. I was presenting my kids with vegetables. They would just pick out the pasta. And, I realized that they weren't getting the healthy, balanced diet that I wanted. So that was a sort of wake up call for me. And I started doing a lot of work on helping parents with picky eaters and healthy eating for kids. And then eventually, well, one of the things I realized is that it's really difficult to teach our kids healthy eating if we're not eating healthily. And a lot of the parents I was talking to and working with, they weren't eating healthily and they wanted their kids to eat healthily. And that's a pretty impossible situation to be in. So I pivoted slightly, and now I work with mums and helping them, but mums who also want to teach their kids healthy eating and healthy living. And it's fabulous now.
Wow. Well, you hit on a few items, and we're definitely gonna, discuss pretty much each one on its own merit. But so you're right. I mean, it is crazy that children, they somehow, I don't know how it turned, but I think over the last couple of decades, the food industry or the food, restaurant business, has flourished with, some like snacks and fast food and things like that. There's great deal of stuff on supermarkets that has like just sweets and sugars and all kind of candies and, snack, like chips and all those things, right? And while they taste great, because I mean, obviously it's a mixture of salt and sugar, and it's always good, right? And flavors, but it would not and never will replace real fruits and vegetables and things like that. Like I have this thing with my own kids, like I had mentioned earlier. I have 3 kids, and their health, their food, habits, just I can't handle it. I really can't. I already gave up. And I just said I say that, but maybe I won't after this show because you'll help me out here. But certainly what I've noticed is that they, no matter what you put on the table. Now, and there's 2 levels, right? You mentioned it is hard to teach the children to eat healthy if you're not eating healthy, and we're going to talk about that. But even if, like in my case, I love vegetables, I love salads, I love stuff, and my kids did eat them when they were younger, and all of a sudden they give up, no more. And now, I mean, their menu is limited to chicken cutlets, maybe burgers, plain, cheese, pizza, and that's it. Nothing, snacks, nothing else. And no matter where we go, you can go to the fanciest restaurant, you can go to the healthiest restaurant, they'll still manage to get something with a fry and a burger and a bun, which is crazy, right? And I keep telling them, like, you're not getting any nutrition in your body. I mean, there's no vitamins or nothing. I mean, you're getting sugars and carbs. I mean, at least in fat, that's all I'm seeing in that combination. But really there's nothing. And so the first things first, you've obviously been dealing with this. What would you contribute this particular trend to? That's the first thing. And then we can talk about the parents and the environment.
Sure. Yeah. Well, I mean, both really good questions. And yeah, I think it's really an interesting question. Why has the world got to this situation? And I think it's complex. I think there's more than one reason. But, as you say, we've got food industries who are busy marketing. Not only are they marketing, they employ people to try and make things as tasty, delicious as they possibly can so that we want to go and eat that foods. In the same time, we've also had a little bit of misinformation from our governments back in the years where they said, hey, you have to eat high carbohydrates and low fat diets, which now we're seeing is not true. And on top of that, they were subsidizing the carbohydrates. So, if you go and look at perhaps buying some apples, they're more expensive than buying, well, what I would call biscuits, but you would call cookies. You can get a really cheap packet of cookies for like 30 cents, an entire packet. That's more expensive than cheaper than an apple, So there's so many things that are going on. But above all, I think it's all about habits. Mm-hmm. And it's just this thing that gets cycled on. And we eat, and our children eat. And I know that you're painting a different picture, but the majority of people eat in a way that they learnt growing up. That's what happens to the most people, is that whatever they ate at home, they're going to carry on eating. Now, obviously, it's more complicated than that because both adults and children are what I call glucose-seeking missiles. So it is normal for the human body to want to eat glucose, anything sweet, anything that's going to give them that rush of sugar. So it could be pasta, it could be bread, because these all get broken down into our bodies quite quickly and give us that sugar rush. So that's normal. But as parents, we need to take that into consideration as well, because we all want that sugar rush, because back in the past, we needed it. That was our survival. But now we're living in a times when there's just so much. It's so easy for us to get food that we have to be aware of that and compensate for that, I think.
Well, it is. And you know what? You actually made a great point. And, just as I'm listening to you, it is also our fault, because again, to your point, yes, I when I gave you the picture of my meals and how my kids ate, I mean, technically, if I did not provide those kinds of food to them, they wouldn't eat them. And that's the dilemma, because at a point I was literally not buying those things, but I had to give in because they were not eating anything else. So you just kind of like, kind of cave in and just, okay, I'm going to buy you this. Like for a minute, I don't even buy snacks, but then sometimes, oh, Dad, you don't buy snacks. We don't have any snacks. Then you kind of feel bad and you buy them. So it is a parent's issue, because to your point, it's if we are teaching, or at least allowing those elements to be on the table, they will take advantage of them. And so now it's a cultural thing. I think it's beyond just, one family. I think it's all of us as parents. We need to be the ones who really from the get-go try to almost prevent this from happening. Now, to your point, there's so many influences out there. And so TV, media, the marketing, so now social media, forget about it. Everything is, popping up in your, in your devices, and our kids live on the cyberspace these days. Right. And so that's all of a challenge right there. And you're right. Again, you got all these industries that push these products and they make them look good, taste good too. I mean, listen, we all every now and then take a sneak peek and snack in something. It does taste delicious. And sometimes we tell ourselves, okay, I'm just cheat day today. I'm gonna get a little thing. But your kids are doing the same thing. But we've noticed, over the years, that led to obesity problems. You talked about constipation. There's no fiber. That's a big deal, right? But kids at a healthy age, the body is still functional, right? So they will probably still be able to make it. But as they age, those things are becoming more problematic. And then you have diabetes. Now there's more an influx of, let's say, pediatric diabetes versus, when back in the days, it's like someone that's aging, when that's when the diabetes hits. So you have all these problems. So your concept, is a global concept. It's a pretty comprehensive package that you offer when you talk to your clients. And also that's what you advocate for. So let's talk about your concept step by step.
Well, before we talk about that, I do just want to say to you,
sure,
it is a really difficult position to be in. Like, I hear you saying, I could have done this differently, but it's almost like our kids hold us hostage and they're saying,
thank you.
I'm not going to eat anything. It's so difficult for us to manage that internally. So, don't beat yourself up about it. You're definitely not the only person who's done that. But again, it's about taking a step back and looking at it from this position of, hey, you know what? My kids aren't going to starve. I'm going to give them healthy foods and they can pick their healthy foods. So that's essentially what I'm teaching with families is it's not any one moment that you're feeding your children. It's the whole of everything. And you need to look at all the food that they are being given over a day, a week, a month. And yeah, essentially it's a bit of hard love to a lot of people, but a lot of people, their diet isn't as healthy as we like to think. And people say things like, oh, well, I eat some vegetables. And I'm like, yeah, you do, but you could eat more. And the more packaged foods we have, as you've hit on, the more we want those packaged foods. And if you compare the packaged foods in terms of sugar and salt, as you say, they've got so much sugar and salt in them that fruit and vegetables can't compete. So part of what I do is teach people, hey, do you know what? You can love healthy eating. It can be easy. It can be fun. It's all about vegetables. Easy and fun. Did I say that?
Yeah.
But yeah, and you can teach your kids this, and it can be a way of living that is easy for us as busy parents, because we're all busy. We don't have time to be cooking super amazing meals. We just want stuff that is easy, that our kids can enjoy, And when I say enjoy, I don't mean their favorite food every single day. I just mean food that is acceptable to them, that will nourish them and feed them. So yeah, it's, healthy eating, number one. The other things that I teach are healthy movement and exercise. Again, super important for both adults and kids. Sleep and emotional wellness. Another big one for kids. I don't know about your kids, but my kids, so many big emotions, so much screaming and upset about what feels to us as minor things. But again, how do we teach
drama.
Yeah, exactly. But how do we teach our kids emotional wellness? Again, by demonstrating it. That's how we teach them. And so we have to do all of this work on ourselves. We have to nail that healthy eating, start doing some exercise, sleep well, and really work on our emotional wellness so that we can teach our kids these things.
I mean, it sounds easy. It sounds like that's the purpose. But you said it. I mean, it's a very difficult journey because, first of all, when the kids are much younger, you have control to a degree. I mean, you put on the table. It's not like they're gonna go and pick up. You feed them, right? And then they get a little older to start choosing stuff. To your point, I mean, if we can just give them better offerings at home or wherever we go, that can be stuff. Like I can tell you, like there were times where they were much younger and I would not allow them to have, let's say, the pizzas and stuff, maybe once a month or whatever. But there was a point where I couldn't do that anymore because they speak for themselves. I want pizza.
Your children are much older though, and it does get like once they're older, that's another conversation, isn't it?
Yeah.
Like allowing them to make their own choices. How old did you say your children were?
15 and 14. Yeah.
Yeah.
And what you do, you have the conversation. That's the difficult part is that you having the conversation, but it's not just you that's having the conversation. Their friends are having the conversation. Mm-hmm. And maybe like you almost pushing them to do something that all their circle is not, familiar with. So for example, they hang out with their friends. Everybody wants pizza. Everybody wants, wings. Everyone wants nachos, and stuff like that. So they, nobody's like asking, can we have a salad? Yeah, it's not. I have not seen that actually in their gatherings. Like, let's have some. My daughter sometimes will snack on carrots and things like that. But over, like my son is the complete opposite. Like literally, even sauce. I mean, I'm talking nothing. I mean, that's good. I mean, he doesn't do ketchup and stuff, which is actually a good thing. But like everything with him is bland. Like, there's no flavor. The only thing he likes is syrup, which is just corn syrup. Not good at all for you. He puts it on everything. So and I've been having this challenge. I'm like, guys, look, you need to take care of yourself. Now you don't feel a thing. And then all of a sudden you're going to have all these problems and your body is not going to get any better. It gets to a point and then everything else that you build now is going to affect the future. And that's really the concept. So yes. So parents, and again, like I'm not beating on myself, but at the same time, it's like I do because like you do them if you don't, you do them if you do, because it's still your responsibility until the point where they become completely independent. And I tell them, guys, when you go out there and do your thing, it's your body, it's your world, right? Do whatever you want with it. I mean, I wish you the best. I want you to be healthy, but I can't do anything about it. I look at me. I mean, I try to eat healthy. I diversify my stuff to your point. You have to have a nice little bit of a spectrum in between, your proteins, your carbs, your veggies, your vegetables, fruits, all that good stuff. Right. And you can have cheat days. You can do little things. You can have a cookie every once in the blue moon. Also, you mentioned healthy stuff such as exercise. You can't just eat. Eating by itself is one thing, but you also have to build, your body and so on and so forth. And so like my kids with the social media now, one is a little bit more active, but they got to a point where now they kind of close their door, their teenage, times, they close the door. They're online with all their friends, FaceTiming and all the stuff. The other guy is on the Xbox, working his fingers and his thumb, that's the workout he gets. And now they're like literally like just sitting on a couch, or on a chair and just like spending hours sitting. So your body is really, the little calories they burn is not going to be enough. So they take more than what they do. And then as they sit, they're just snacking. They got a little back here.
Okay.
And no matter what you do, it doesn't work. So what would we say to that?
Okay. So, well, I think there's two things to think about. First of all, the younger children. So if we tackle the younger children first, and then we'll talk about the older children, because the older children are slightly different. So if you've got younger children, what you want to be doing essentially is there's a lady called Ellen Satter who is a pediatric dietitian, and she came up with this concept, which is called the division of responsibility. And essentially it goes like this. As adults, as parents, we decide what foods are available to our children, and we decide essentially the routine. So it might look like breakfast, snack, lunch, snack, dinner. And we offer our children the opportunity to eat. We don't push them to eat. It's an invitation to eat. And to your point, I would say it's really difficult as a parent to offer our children food and for them not to accept that food, because we have this inbuilt desire to feed our children and to make sure our children are fed. And it's something that we have to teach ourselves, that we don't need to control, that they can do that. Another thing I would say about this is we want to be very aware of portion sizes. And we particularly want to be aware of portion sizes of what I call easy to eat food. And obviously that includes ice cream and all desserts, but it also includes what I call white refined carbohydrates. So bread and pasta. My children are what I call carb junkies. You know, they love white refined carbohydrates. They have this thing about bread and they love it. And it's okay for them to eat small quantities of that. But if I gave them a table and said, here you go, loads of fruits and vegetables, loads of bread, loads of protein, help yourself, they would eat bread and protein and nothing else. And my children eat fruit and vegetables, and they eat fruit and vegetables because essentially I've trained them to eat fruit and vegetables. They're normal kids who would eat white refined carbohydrates and protein given the choice. And so we give them an appropriate portion of those things, which is actually a small portion. A lot of people overestimate how much is an appropriate portion for a child, a young child. And then you say, you can have free reign of the fruit and vegetables. And that way, children will eat the fruit and vegetables. And, you know, parents say, no, it's definitely not going to happen. And it will happen. They do get used to fruit and vegetables. They get used to them just being normal. And there's also this other thing, which is there's no such thing as only hungry for chocolate. Your children will say to you, oh, I'm really hungry after dinner. Can I have some chocolate? And you're like, well, if you're still hungry, there's some carrot sticks there or some cut up apple. You can eat that. And they go, no, it has to be chocolate. And you're like, well, it's not hunger then, is it? If you're saying, I want to eat that treat. So we get to decide when the treats are. And, let me backtrack. It's not that we get to decide when the treats are, we get to decide how often those treats are allowed. So for a young child, I would recommend one sweet thing a day, and that could be breakfast cereal. I personally hate breakfast cereal. I consider it to be like the worst thing that you could ever eat. But if that's what you have in your house, that also is considered, like, look at the sugar content. It's got so much sugar in it. But you can have one of those things. So one cookie a day. And then perhaps once a week, you can have one, candy or something a week. And your children, they can choose if they want to have their candy on Friday or Saturday. So it's about getting that balance right of allowing them to make choices, but also not allowing them to just eat cake the whole time, because, give a child a choice. Of course, they're going to eat cake the whole time, but that's not on offer. So that's just not part of the equation. So does that make sense for younger children?
Oh, yes. Well, I think because, again, younger children, you have a little bit of control. So like I said, in the beginning, you can have, you have the first 7.
They are like little lawyers. Remember, they're like little lawyers. So it sounds very easy in practice, but, they're going to push you and they're going to push your buttons, and they know which buttons to push. So in order to do that, you have to get comfortable with yourself. So think of it like a seatbelt. When you go in the car, your child always wears the seatbelt. It's a non-negotiable. There's no they might kick off about not wearing the seatbelt, but you're not going to get in the car and drive down the highway without the child putting on their seatbelt. And once we have that firmness within inside us, like, this is what is for dinner, it's on the table, you can help yourself. There's nothing else. There's no other options. The other thing I would say is, if you've got picky children, make sure you include something that's acceptable. It's not about starving your children. It's about knowing that, hey, there's something that my child can eat if they're hungry. I've fulfilled my role, which is to offer you something acceptable to satisfy your hunger, which doesn't have to be cake, it doesn't have to be cookies, it doesn't have to be ice cream. We love these things, but the lesson is we eat them in moderation.
Well,
So it's about
keyword.
creating internal limits.
Well, keyword moderation, and
Yeah.
you've touched on a couple of items. First of all, I agree with you about the cereal business, and it's because it's funny because it's not there's nothing good in it. Yet, if you hear all the commercial, at least in the U.S., breakfast of the champions, and cereals, at the helm of that, right? And then they give you a little orange juice, which is all concentrated sugar rush, maybe a couple of fruits and bits and pieces of that, but typically that's what the commercials look like, right? But it's all sugar. The actual ingredients are all sugar plus sugar. So,
yeah, exactly.
It's really
5 different types of
sugar.
sugar.
Exactly. Yeah, they throw in cinnamon and then it tastes good. That's all. But so that's one thing. But so I think there's an element that we need to highlight because you're an international pretty much doctor, and every country has different ways of dealing with the food business, right? And I've lived overseas, and I've lived in the US for 30 years, and also at the same time I've traveled all over the world. And depending on what country you go to, the portion, you talked about portions, it's tremendously variable from one end to the other. So for example, in Europe the portions are smaller. And that's why I've noticed when you go and order food, they give you nice little size stuff, and it's you like, if you're very hungry, you might need to get two meals, right? And I'm not saying that's just in general, but in general, when you go to a restaurant, whatever, you can get. Now, obviously, if you go to McDonald's or Burger King, it's the same thing, no matter where you go, right? But so in the US, you go into a restaurant, I mean, they give you these massive plates. I mean, it's fully, loaded, and you're asking for pasta. I mean, it's not pasta. It's actually a pasta, galore day. I mean, it's like, all the carbs you can have, right? So everything is overrated. Like we have a joke, wherever we go and you ask for fries, there's always fries left over because it's just so much fries that they give you with your food, and everything comes with fries. So drinks, you usually get a small cup and a bottle of drinks. In here, it's like free refills. Go ahead, 12 ounces. Or more. So that's kind of like, a challenge. And even like in New York City, a few years back, they wanted to limit some of the bigger, cups from some of the stores like 7-Elevens and things like that, because it was a big, problem with obesity in children and so on and so forth. It was an attempt to actually kind of reduce some of that. But so portion is a big deal, whether at home and stuff. The other part, I think that culturally, in some cultures, there is not enough because of financials, because us have people don't spend money outside. So they'll eat home. And so home cooking is a lot more, healthier than anything else. Even if there's junk in there, it's still better junk, but when like in our culture here in the US, I mean, we tend to eat more outside, and whether you're working in a school, you eat at school, right? They give you these little snackies and stuff. I mean, the food's not, but it's still kind of same concept, burger, pizza and stuff. So it's the same elements. You go outside to restaurants, you eat, at least 2-3 times a week outside. That's if you're, conservative. Some people eat takeout, all the time, and order in, food all the time, or they eat out all the time. So that's a problem. And most of this food is high sodium, high sugar. It's also fast food or fried stuff. So it's not good for you at all. Kids or no kids, it's affecting everyone. And so the reason I'm bringing this is just that this show is pretty much global, and a lot of people are going to listen to it. But I think I wanted to just put the perspective that depending on where you are, these trends may vary. There's some common elements, but at the end of the day, it might change based on the environment and the culture you're in. Like we talked about Spain and Morocco, the food is different.
Absolutely.
It's just the base, for example, in there to eat, there's vegetables plus part of the culture, and just like all the meals, they have some sort of a vegetable business going on, right? Or fish.
But it's interesting that you say that, because they've done studies about how we shop and how we buy things. And essentially, people in Spain buy lots of fruit and vegetables because there's a fruit and vegetable market. In my little town, there's a fruit and vegetable market every single day, and a big one on Sunday. Now, it's not that people in Spain are more health conscious or more aware of things. It's just that that's what's there for them to buy. And the reverse is true. So if you look at big cities and you've got all your takeouts and restaurants, and it's not so easy to buy the fruit and vegetables. So people can't buy fruit and vegetables. And it is actually really sad. But again, it's this cultural thing that we need to make fruit and vegetables more available and not more expensive than the cheapest foods that you can buy in the supermarket.
Well, to add to that, I mean, the other thing, like sometimes you see this, you can have, fruits and vegetables. Well, let's say, vegetables, but then now the dressings that are used, I mean, you got all these delicious dressings, and there's like, they look like a rainbow spectrum. Every color, every taste is available, and people like to mix those things, and they put a lot of dressings. I mean, even when you buy salad outside, they dredge that stuff with dressing. It's not like a natural, nice, maybe some oil and vinegar, the old traditional way, like some olive oil. None of that stuff. I mean, it's really like blue ranch, blue cheese and whatever, all those kind of ranch, ranch and blue cheese, elements, mustard, mayo, whatever you name it. So all these things are elements, and kids love these things, they just have a whole bunch of dressings and sauces around. I mean, at the exception of my son, I think everybody else does, because he's anti everything with the sauce in it. Like literally, if he gets anything, it's just the bread, the meat, and the cheese. If any, I'm talking about like a burger. Then he likes, the hot dogs, which is nothing healthy and nutrition about it. So, and I think that's the thing. So portions, habits, in terms of like, availability, is part of it. The type of food. I mean, if the family sits around the table, it's one thing. What I've noticed also that's changing in the culture. Kids these days don't even have time to sit on the table. Like back in the days I grew up, lunchtime, everybody is on the table. Dinner time, everybody. Now you add to it, everybody is sitting on the table with a phone.
Mm-hmm. That's
even sad, right? And so everybody's like busy and they just want to like shove their food in and just run up to do whatever they do. So these are all, I think, phenomena of today's age, and that has changed the dynamics. And so for you as a practitioner, again, maybe in Spain, it's a little, lighter, I guess. I'm looking at it from the US perspective, and it's crazy. And I'm sure a lot of parents listening to this will probably like, yeah, I guess it's right. Some people may be in the line, they may say, no, that's not my kids. But you know what? I think the majority is having the same problem, one way or the other. And I've seen them. I go places, I travel a lot also within the US. Everybody is fries, burgers and stuff, and all the stuff, and they just keep throwing. And then there's a lot of buffet business. That's another thing, right? You just keep adding that food on the table, and so you can eat. And that's the other thing. This. You put food, as long as there's food on the table, people are going to eat. Mm-hmm. So you limit the quantity. Hopefully, that may make a difference.
Or make that food fruit and vegetables. That's what I would say. I would say one of the things you really want to do is get your kids familiar with fruit and vegetables, so that they are, do you know what? When I'm hungry, I eat fruit and vegetables. That's my go-to food. And if you've got, a table and you think, okay, I want there to be lots of food on the table. If it's fruit and vegetables, it's really difficult to overeat fruit and vegetables, like I love thinking about this. 100 grams of cabbage has the same amount of calories in it as one. We have these things called hobnobs in the UK. I think they're a bit like a Graham's cracker. I'm not quite sure, but they're like a standard cookie. They're not very exciting. Mm-hmm. Now, a whole cabbage is like 10 of those biscuits. Now, I don't know about you, but I can definitely eat a whole packet of cookies all in one go. Well, okay, I probably wouldn't do it now, but definitely when I was younger, you just eat the cookies. Now, I love cabbage, but I have never in my entire life eaten a whole cabbage in one go. It's kind of impossible. You can't eat that many fruit and vegetables because they've got fiber in them, which bulks you up. And you're just like, okay, I might eat 2 apples maximum, but you just can't do it. So fruit and vegetables are your friends.
Well, no, listen, I hear you. And again, the purpose of today is really to just bring that and drive it to the people that are listening. It is a good way to stay healthy and to build up new habits and better habits in terms of eating, especially with children. Again, to your point, there's an education. There's also a time frame that you need to build this over. It's not just going to be sudden. You build the right foundation, and with all the influences, you can still control it to a degree. But like I said, I mean, I shared some of my personal experience from before and now, and how that translated. Like I mentioned, my older son, now he had gone through the same phase, but then he's changed completely. Now he's more aware and conscious, and he eats the right stuff, he gets the right nutrients, so he's compensating. But after a very long period of time where he didn't do any of that, right? So I think my experience is just as very similar to many, and you deal with these people on a day-to-day basis. There's clients who, I'm sure, like if I ask you the question, how many people on a day-to-day basis that you meet, they all have the same situation, like my kids don't like to eat food. And then I want to also touch, on one element, which is the nutrient, factor in each of those things. You talked about, constipation and fiber, and that's a big deal. People don't know what's a good fruit and vegetable to help you do that, right? We all think prunes, right, will be helpful, but like we might think that because you're involved in it, you listen to it, you read stuff, but kids don't know the difference. And maybe prunes are very delicious to me. Like I have this joke with the kids, everything like raisins, fruits and stuff, rich, sweet. You can't get any sweeter than those. I mean, even the artificial sweeteners, they don't do it, right? And so just get some natural stuff.
That's because you're coming from, sounds like you eat relatively healthily. And so when we're eating all of these foods, the fruit and vegetables don't compare. I did this experiment once. It was Easter here. And, obviously Easter, chocolate time. It's also the time that we have delicious strawberries in Spain. So you eat a strawberry and it's this delicious, beautiful flavor, bursting with flavor. Eat a bit of chocolate, which is obviously sugar. Your mouth is just awash with sugar. Go back to the strawberries. Oh my goodness, no flavor, acidic. Why am I eating this horrible strawberry? It's not the strawberry, it's the chocolate. And, that's one example. But if you think about what's happening to your taste buds and inside your body, if you're constantly eating those packaged foods, then the prunes and the raisins, they don't taste sugar. They don't taste sweet. But if you're constantly eating fruit and vegetables and healthy things which aren't packaged, then yes, they taste amazing. They taste so delicious. They're full of natural sweeteners and they're wrapped up in all that goodness as well. So it's again about looking at everything that we're eating rather than just a short amount of what we're eating.
Excellent. So doctor, for this particular piece of the discussion, what would be like a good example for a healthy meal for kids that they really can enjoy everywhere in the world, and something that's available? I'm sure there's some stuff that you might not have what's seasonal, but there's things that be available all year long. Especially, I mean, in the US, we don't run out of things. They just, they get them from all over the world or whatever time. I mean, maybe in some countries it's more, seasonal. Like you can have strawberries all year long. They just bring them from the other side of the country. It changes the dynamics there. But the fact of the matter is, what would be like something that you recommend typically to a family that's having this struggle? And maybe we can hopefully assist, folks today.
Yeah, sure.
To just start with that.
So, well, without sounding repetitive, I am going to sound repetitive, and I'm going to say it is just about fruit and vegetables. But what you can do is, say, for example, you love pizza and pizza is your child's favorite, this is what we love. Typically what people do is they say, okay, we're going to go and have pizza. We're just having pizza, and it's as much pizza as you can eat. But if you say, okay, pizza is essentially the white refined carbohydrate, I'm going to give my child a portion of that pizza, and then I'm going to give them other fruits and vegetables. So think about the things that they enjoy. My children will eat carrot sticks and broccoli, and they love frozen peas, and they often have the frozen peas like still frozen. I don't cook them, and they like to turn these into a lolly. And so now they're getting their pizza, they're enjoying their pizza, but they're also getting fruit and vegetables. And it's still pizza night for the kids. They still love it because they're still eating pizza. So it doesn't have to be, oh my goodness, we have to entirely change what we're eating. Take what you love and change it. And the other thing you can do as well is I'm all about creating healthy snacks, things like cakes and cookies and things, but finding different ways of doing it, just enjoying experimenting. One of the things I love doing is my son, my picky child, calls it Mummy's Yummy Chocolate Cake. And I actually make it with eggplant. Here in Spain, we have so many eggplants. We call them aubergines. But I swear, one day I came back from market with like 30 kilograms. This lady is like, she sells them to me for €1. I had to chop the bad bits out, but I love a challenge. I'm like, okay, we're going to use all of these. And I cook them up with a little bit of water, whiz them down, and that's your basis, and add some cocoa powder, You might want to add some raisins and things like that for a little bit of sugar, some dried coconut, some perhaps almond flour. You can just make it up, some chia seeds, and I put it in the oven. And my children think of these as, well, they're marketed as, chocolate brownies. If you take your standard supermarket chocolate brownie, you'll be like, that is nothing like a chocolate brownie. It's not a chocolate brownie, but it is a snack that is healthy and easy to make and contains very little sugar and actually contains a lot of amazing healthy things. So I would say just have fun and experiment and allow your children to get into the kitchen as well. And not all kids like cooking, and it doesn't mean that if they cook, they will eat something, but it's just about remembering that food is this thing that not only nourishes us, but also brings us together as a family. And it can be enjoyable without it having to be, oh my goodness, I have to eat sugar and too much the whole time.
Well, listen, that's great advice. And as a matter of fact, it's you made it sound very simple. The idea is you don't just remove them from it, you kind of phase them out into it and also mix and match things. So this way they can still have their appeal with yours and as a parent. And by mixing up the two, they'll get to like the stuff and eventually will transit to a better, formula. And I think that is a super formula to actually use for every one of us. I think even adults can do that.
Yeah, exactly. I'm all about making it easy and practical because we're all busy. And so this idea of just add more vegetables, suddenly it is easy. People go, oh, it's so complicated. I'm like, no, just go and get some frozen peas. If you're having frozen pizza, get some frozen peas. It's that easy. And you've made a step towards being more healthy.
Well, one item you mentioned is about taste buds and how the brain also functions. I mean, if you get almost like acclimated to one type of sweets and, taste, your body is conditioned. So no matter, it's like, everything that you're going to eat after that will be like bitter, right? Because you get so much, sugar taste that the other stuff that's sweet is not going to be as sweet. And that's a problem. So you're right. Like, giving them the right, portions, the right, mixture, sharing with them the opportunity to actually be part of that decision. I think that's also good. And those are all great, pieces of advice that I think everyone listening and watching this episode would be able to benefit from. So that's the food and just the condition of the food and stuff. Now, in your pillars, we mentioned also something about sleep. And so now let's talk about that. I mean, our kids these days, I call them zombies. I'm sorry, my children, and again, I always refer to me because, they're the closest example I have. Now people say, well, those are your kids, that's not how we do it. That's okay. This is not about me, literally. This is just about bringing an example and then hopefully getting from it. But a lot of these children today are hooked on these games and things and online videos and so on and so forth. Now, everything is overseas now. I mean, when you're online, there's no real time frame. You can be playing in the US with somebody in Australia and that's a day apart, you know what I mean? So it doesn't matter. And so my kids will stay overnight, especially now in summertime, there's no school. And so all their habits are like, their sleep, patterns are different. And I call them zombies, like you're a vampire. I mean, you're living the night and you sleep during the day. What the hell? And so that is not a healthy opportunity. And so I've been trying to, weave them out through that. I mean, school days is a little different, but when summer hits is a problem. Now we are in the summer and, I'm not sure if that is a global pandemic as well, but the idea is sleep is important. So to your expertise, what would you say and what would be some of the recommendations? I mean, you can't really deprive them from that. I'll tell you what I do. I just take the Xbox away and that's it. You're sleeping at 11. Give me your controllers. But sometimes that doesn't always work because it backfires on you, right? Then now they're not happy and you can't get anything done. They sleep halfway because they can't sleep really. And in the morning, they're like sitting with you like this. That's where the zombie business comes in. So what would you say to that?
Good question. And to answer, your comment, yes, I think this is another global pandemic, and it's not just our children, it is adults as well. And here in Spain, well, it's not just in Spain, but here in Spain, typically people stay up so late and the young children stay up so late that I am often horrified. But so often I speak to people and say, how are you? And they go, I'm tired. And you're like, there's a really easy cure for that. But culturally, we have this resistance to going to bed. But it's really easy. Just work backwards. Whatever time you need to go, get up 8 hours before that. And I know there are circumstances when sometimes that that can't happen. But we have this, oh, I'm going to stay up late, I'm going to watch television, I'm going to read a book, whatever it is. And it's all down to habits. It is just habits. Once you get into the habit of going to bed on time, you know, whatever time that is for you, your brain, your body will just acclimatize to it. So again, it's just about habits. And what they call good sleep hygiene is that you just want to be consistent. So going to bed the same time every single night, getting up the same time. And, you know, there's more things you can do. So for example, you know, don't have screens late at night. Make sure you get up in the morning and get some beautiful sunshine on you, which tells your body, hey, it's morning time. It's time to wake up now. But it's all about being consistent. And for our children, they need to do the same thing. So consistent bedtime, consistent getting up time. I know the summer holidays are a bit different, and teenagers as well are different. You know, your kids are that age now where you're getting to that stage where it's getting that balance right of still having some input, but also allowing them to learn life's lessons. That, you know, that's the age where they're beginning to say, hey, I want to stay up late and I want to sleep late. And that's a sort of balancing act that we need to juggle. And I haven't quite got there yet with my kids. So you can tell me what it's like.
It's tough, I can tell you. But you know, doctor, it's, you know, the hard part is not so much like you can try to control the kids, right? And you know, like I told you, I take drastic measure when I really like, you know, sometimes I'll let it go for a minute and then I get tired. I'm like, no, give me a phone, 11 o'clock. I need everything. I take it, come back in the morning. When I wake up, you have them. So that's it. But the problem is that now you're removing them. See, now it's a social environment. You're removing them from their social crowd, you know, and everybody and their friends are pretty much hanging out. So that's the other thing. Like, you know, we all are focused on our own direct kids and families and, you know, and because we want the best. And every other family is probably doing the same thing in their own way, but not everybody is applying the same rules. So now I am working with my kids to have this particular rhythm. And then you have the other families that, you know, that may not have that same rhythm. Then you have also social elements. Maybe some families are together, some families separate, you know, husband and wife. So you have, you know, different parents. So everybody tries to compensate by allowing the kids to do more. And now your kids are also part of that system because now they have to kind of live with the two, you know, my friend has, you know, one home, two homes basically, right? One structured this way, one structured this way. But I'm in the middle of that because I'm still dealing with the same friend. And so when they move here, I still want to be with them, but then now in this house, they can stay all night long. In this house, they can. So those are some of the things that, you know, I think in a teenage world, you know, it becomes more difficult and it becomes an argument. Dad, come on, mom, Dad, you know, and now then you have also the parents. That's the other thing. I think there's got to be an alignment between the parents when, you know, at home, because kids are notorious about this. They'll come to one, whoever is the one that has the weaker, you know, span, and they feel that they can get over quickly with, they use that particular parent to actually kind of leverage them. And I see that sometimes they come to me, sometimes depends what they need. You know, I'm the good guy or the bad guy, depends what angle they're using, right? And vice versa. But those are all things that I think in society that are affecting the behavior and the healthy habits, whether it's food or, to your point, sleep here, it's all the same, but there has to be a way. When you mentioned, you know, teenagers, that's like probably the toughest years of anybody, right? That you have to deal with as a parent or a child. When they're younger, you can control that. I mean, we shut down. Now, back in the days, and this is the other thing, right? So 30 years ago, maybe, or just beyond, you know, people tend to have one TV, right? In the home, it's a living room. Everybody goes to their room, shuts down. Now everybody's got TVs in their room, and you don't even have to have a TV. You just have to have a phone. You got everything in there, video, game, you know, you can socialize, you can do everything. So it became a lot more difficult. So technology today has also helped in some of these bad habits. And you as a practitioner, you have seen a change. Now, that leads me to the next question. So how have you actually tried to keep up with the times, you know, and kind of adjust to these things? Has it been difficult? Are there any elements that you throw in there that may change things? You mentioned something about screens. Screen time. You're right. I mean, people stay in front of their screen, you know, until like they you know, they want to go to sleep, but they don't, unless their body shuts down. They're still going to be there, and those lights are just beaming into your brains and just kind of like, you know, getting you all excited. So all these things are a problem. So in your expertise, over the years, you've seen the technology grow, and have you seen a serious impact? And are there any measures that are being taken right now that you can share with us, beyond what we already discussed?
Yeah, no, well, I think it is difficult. And it is something that we just have to sort of navigate. And I think it comes down to deciding what the limits are for your family. So, and I think this looks different for every single family, because you've got, all families are unique. And I think you want to think about all of those elements. So, for example, my children, like all children, want to be on the screen the whole time. And although they are quite active children, given the choice, I think they would just be on the screen the whole time. So I try and look at it from a point of view of, I want my children to be active. So, for example, in the summer here in Spain, they do summer school, essentially, like activities. And my children are doing sports activities all morning. So I know that I've covered that. When they get home, they can be more sedentary. They can have a bit of screen time because I know that they've done something. But if we have a long holiday and they're not doing any activities, then my rules are, okay, if you want to have screen time, you have to make sure you do something else. You have to move your body in some way as well. And one thing that I do think is very useful for all of us is to have a sports watch, which helps us monitor how much we're moving, because it's really easy to be really sedentary without realizing, but it's also really easy to move enough. It's just often we aren't aware of it. So, those watches, I'm showing you that I don't have one because mine is broken at the moment, but that they are just a really good way. And kids actually, well, adults and kids, they have these little badges that you can earn, and they're like, oh, I have to do my 10,000 steps today. When my children have got them on, they'll sort of like get up halfway through a movie and do a little dance because they want their watch, it beeps at them and says, you have to do some movement. So sports watches for everyone. But I think it's about finding your family rules, and like the seatbelt rule, you stick to those rules. So you might want to get everyone on board, depending on the age of your kids, sit down, say, hey, these are the rules. You can have this much screen time, but when you have this much screen time, I want you to be doing movement. We use it also as I want you to be cleaning up after dinner. You have to do your jobs, all of these things. This is what family life looks like, and we're going to stick to it and, get everyone's agreement, which sounds easier said than done. I know.
Well, it is, but you're right. I mean, there are ways, like, for example, I set up this rule in the summer. When the sun is up, we're all out there, go outside, do stuff, play basketball, do what you have to do. And then at a certain time, when it gets a little darker, you can come in now, you can get into your front screen. That's fine. Spend a few times, a few hours, and then you can actually shut down and unplug and reset. You do that and it works. So that's the other thing. Kids are very tricky. They take their time to adjust with you for a moment until you get comfortable. And that's a trick they use. So I advise to everybody, they get you think you're smart, they're smarter. They play that card for a couple of days until you get comfortable, and you get also lazy to track.
Yeah, and they like to push. They're constantly pushing the boundaries. Yeah, exactly. That's their job. Their job is to push the boundaries. And we have to be aware of that, because we find it frustrating. We find it that, they come and they ask, oh, can I have another hour of screen time? Can I have another? Well, of course they're going to ask. Why wouldn't they? Because you might say yes. But if you consistently say yes, you've created that habit. And then when you say no, oh my goodness, so much tantrum.
Well, but you're right. We create the monsters, right? It's us. But again, every parent has a weakness, and probably the most weakness you can have as a parent is your kids. No matter how strong you think.
Yeah, I like that.
I'm a dad, and I'm the tough one, but I still kind of like, cave in every now and then. I mean, like, oh, don't go to dad, go to mom. Mom is easier. But then sometimes, like, dad, please. And then the mom goes, can you please? And then I'm like, okay. And I'm like, okay, just for today. And then forget it. A week later, oh, it's been a week already. Let's talk again.
Yeah.
And that's like, it's just an ongoing struggle. And, whether it's the food, whether it's the sleep, whether it's just the overall picture, it is not easy. It's not a picnic. And again, the reason we're doing this show is really just to highlight this to the people so they can see that this is, you might think that you're the only one going through it, but everybody else going through one way or another in this, especially in this time and age. One last item that we've mentioned earlier on the pillars, which is emotional wellness. Right. So what would you say about that? And we actually did hit the hour, but we're there. So this is intriguing. So let's just cover up that last item of your pillars.
Yeah, emotional wellness is an amazing topic, which I love talking about. And essentially, it's about being aware of our emotions and our thoughts and choosing the thoughts and emotions that serve us as opposed to the ones that don't. And what do I mean by that? Well, it's so easy to get caught in these negative emotions of I can't do it and I'm upset about something. And that leads to what I call the negative plug hole. And what we want to do is get to the place where, yeah, life happens. Of course, life happens. We can't stop things from happening. But say, for example, you get upset about something, perhaps your friend says something to upset you, but you have the self-awareness to deal with that and go, okay, I'm upset, process that emotion. Okay, I'm going to move on now, as opposed to a week later on, oh, I'm still upset. It's still, niggling at me. It's taken over my life a little bit. We don't want that. That's that negative plug hole. And emotional awareness is interesting. And, the other thing to say as a parent is that we have these things called mirror neurons, and we're very emotionally attached to our children. And our children have big emotions. And then we reflect those big emotions. So, when a child is busy screaming at you, it's really difficult not to get upset about that. But getting upset about it doesn't help. It's sort of like contagious, that emotion. Mm-hmm. And what we really want to do is keep calm, keep cool, deal with the situation. Again, one of those things that's so easy to say, but not always easy to do in the moment. But that essentially is what emotional wellness is.
Well, it's amazing because with children, you mentioned earlier about, drama. Kids can be very, very dramatic. I mean, at any age, when they're small, they get this tantrum, or they know they fall on the floor and they make noise and oh my God, everybody's looking. I've seen that actually in the shops and supermarkets where some kids will go crazy and the parents are just trying to save the day and the situation and just not get embarrassed. Then they get a little older. It's the same thing. And then when you get involved with them, they become very, how can I say, they're not always pleased to have you around them. But at the teenage age, that becomes very popular. Like, Dad, you're embarrassing me. Dad, you this, why are you going with me? Why are you doing this? So it becomes very challenging. So for parents, it's a dynamic that you have to kind of apply, for and work with and just adjust slowly but surely and understand how you can play with it. I mean, sometimes you almost have to be like that fly in the wall. You be there, but not there. You want to be monitoring without monitoring and just kind of give them the balance so they can feel a little bit of flexibility and freedom, I guess. But don't overwhelm. And it's hard because I fall on that trap all the time. I want to keep that brain and that control. And then sometimes I feel well, I can't always do this because it doesn't look good for them. So now you have to adjust with them. But then again, it's all about the balance. I think everything we discussed today, it's just finding that nice, it's never going to be easy. You got to try, keep trying, make it like a system, work with it, but then try to balance it out. And it's not always going to be 100%. But you get it as close as you can. And I think that's really what I'm reading, what I'm getting from the discussion here. And, and correct me if I'm wrong, but that's really, I think, what the element is. It's not going to be standardized. It's going to vary, but we have to keep doing it because we need to keep those kids healthy as much as we can, mentally, physically, emotionally, and the works, right? And we have to keep saying as parents, because again, it starts with the parents. If we're stressed as parents, the impact is just not going to be good. We're not going to be able to deal with the stuff correctly.
Absolutely. My favorite saying, which is a quote from myself, is the best thing as parents that we can give our kids is our own happiness. And the second best thing is vegetables.
I love that. You're persistent and consistent with the vegetables. But you know what?
I am.
Well, so may I ask? I know we're hovering around the end of the show, but so vegetables. I know that is. Listen, I grew up. Vegetables are delicious. But you're right. It depends where you are. Like in the area where you are. I mean, there's plenty of farmers markets. And you're in a large city. I mean, Barcelona is a huge city, but like in New York, we do have also farmers markets and things like that. But then you tend, like children, depending where they are, that may vary a little bit too, because in the suburbs and the villages, I mean, certainly that's part of the culture, the meals and stuff, the food, and it changes. But vegetables are like, the block, the building blocks of nutrition. I mean, other than meats, right? And a lot of people would prefer to eat more vegetables and salads and stuff than meats today. And one more thing actually we didn't talk about. So fish.
Oh, interesting.
And the reason I said I just think in Barcelona is there's a big port in there, and Spain is a big thing about fish and seafood and stuff like that. I love the paella. So, but the concept of fish, the kids today somehow they just do not do fish. I don't know why. It's crazy. And here's a joke. So I used to actually buy fish nuggets. And when my kids were young enough, I told them those are chicken nuggets. So they were eating chicken nuggets for about 6 years, thinking that they were eating chicken, but it was fish. But you can only lie to a certain point that doesn't work anymore. So, but from a nutrition, from your expertise, why is that the kids don't feel the actual fish, discussion or the fish, eating?
Well, that's an interesting question. I don't know why kids don't. So I have some children who do eat fish and some children who don't. And I suspect a lot of it is to do just again with being exposed to it, and that as a society, we probably eat less fish. Well, unless you live in Spain, and people do eat fish in Spain. But as a society, we don't present it that often, or if we do, it's fish fingers, which they do contain fish, but it looks very different from a fish. Yeah, but I think it's just about familiarity. Our brains don't like what is strange and unknown. We like what's familiar. And so if you can make these things familiar to your kids, then they will like them.
And that, I think that's exactly, thank you for that piece. I mean, you actually nailed it. It's all about what the exposure is. I mean, if there is a nice diversified meal base that is always constant in front of the children, they'll see it. And also exposure. It's just like if your kids don't travel, they're not going to be eager to travel, especially when they haven't traveled or the younger age, right? So it's everything. They start at a young, like everything else. You practice as a young person, that goes with you for the rest of your life. You don't practice something when you're younger, it's hard to actually capture it and pick it up when you're in old age. So I think that goes with food and all these habits. And it is what it is. I mean, I just hope that, people can always constantly look and search and listen to shows maybe, and read about how to support their children to be healthier and have healthy habits. So doctor, it has been a tremendous hour. We've actually covered a lot of grounds and I did a lot of talking too, but I just an engaging discussion here. And, and again, I purposely shared some of my own personal experiences because those are frustrating things that, all parents will probably be going through. Sometimes they don't have the ability to share them. That's the other part. Nobody's going out there, oh my God, my kids don't eat, don't do this. They live day by day and they deal with it. In this case, I had the opportunity to do it with you as an expert. And also, this way you give me the contrast as how to potentially look at it differently. So any last words, for our audiences, before we close the show?
No, I just think that, parenting is tough, but like everything in life, we just have to be intentional and enjoy it. And, I would say the same with our lives. We just have to be intentional and go, I'm just going to enjoy this life. And, what do they say? Change the things that we can change and accept the things that we can't change. What you don't want to do, particularly for younger children, is modify behavior with food. So you don't want to be rewarding them with food, and you don't want to be like punishing them like, oh, if you're badly behaved, you're not going to have dessert. It's just food. Here's some food. If you want it, eat it. If not, don't worry.
That's super, great advice. We don't even have to argue about that. I think it's a pretty simple concept. Thank you. And I think that is sometimes, again, the simplest things are the best, right? So Dr. Orlena, thank you for being on the show and taking the time, from a beautiful place, calling here under the studio. So thank you so much. I appreciate, and I'm sure the audiences, the viewers and listeners will appreciate all the content of today's show. On my behalf, Hurricane H, on behalf of the iHealth channel, the FinFab channel, and the iHealth Radio, thank you very much for watching, and we'll talk soon. New show, new guest, new topic. Ciao, ciao. Bye-bye.